Stop scrolling right now and lean closer because what you are about to read is not just another celebrity headline. It is a turning point, a collision of pride and love, ambition and vulnerability, power and surrender. If you have ever believed that fame protects the heart, think again. If you have ever thought that the brightest stars never kneel to emotion, prepare to be proven wrong. Stay with this story until the very end and decide for yourself whether this was weakness, wisdom, or the boldest act of love the industry has ever witnessed. The night it happened, the city's skyline shimmered like a field of distant constellations. Inside a private penthouse high above the restless streets, silence stretched like a taut string ready to snap. Dylan Wang stood near the glass walls, hands in his pockets, jaw tight, eyes reflecting the lights below. Across the room, Shen Yue sat calmly, her posture steady, her gaze unwavering. This was not an ordinary conversation. It was an ultimatum. And everyone who knew them would later say that something shifted in that room, something that would echo far beyond those walls. Shen Yue did not raise her voice. She did not dramatize her words. That was what made it powerful. Her tone was even, controlled, almost serene. She spoke of respect. She spoke of boundaries. She spoke of protecting her peace, her career, her name. She laid out her non-negotiable rules like carefully placed stones forming a path that could not be stepped around. No late-night ambiguity with co-stars. No public flirtations masked as fan service. No decisions made without transparency. No relationship hidden in shadows. She was not asking. She was declaring. Dylan listened without interrupting, but those close enough to see him that night noticed something rare in his expression. Not anger, not arrogance. Something deeper, something raw. For years he had been known as confident, decisive, unshakable. On screen he commanded attention effortlessly. Off screen he carried the same magnetism. He was used to leading the narrative, not adapting to it. Yet here he stood, confronted not by scandal or critics, but by clarity. The air between them felt charged, not with hostility, but with truth. She continued, explaining that love without boundaries becomes chaos. That admiration without accountability becomes performance. That she would rather walk away than compromise the standards she had built with discipline and quiet strength. Her final words that night were simple. If we move forward, it will be on these terms. Or not at all. The room seemed to pause. Outside, the city moved as always, unaware that inside that penthouse a decision was forming that would ripple through headlines, fan forums, and whispered industry circles. Dylan turned away from the window slowly. He walked toward her, each step deliberate. For a moment he said nothing. He looked at her not as a public figure, not as a co-star, not as a symbol of nostalgic on-screen chemistry, but as a woman who knew exactly what she deserved. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than usual. I had no choice. The words did not sound like defeat. They sounded like realization. He admitted that he had been standing at a crossroads long before that night. The constant pressure of maintaining a public persona. The expectation to entertain, to charm, to blur lines for ratings and applause. The temptation to treat relationships as extensions of publicity. He confessed that part of him feared losing freedom, but another part feared losing her more. And in that instant, something astonishing happened. The dynamic shifted. The power struggle dissolved. What remained was not dominance, but alignment. He chose the rules, not because he was forced, but because he understood. Word spread quickly, though not through official announcements. It moved through subtle changes. Fewer ambiguous interactions. More grounded interviews. A noticeable calm in public appearances together. Fans noticed. Industry insiders noticed. Commentators speculated. Was this a calculated move? Was it damage control? Or was it growth? Behind the scenes, those closest to them described a transformation. Dylan became more deliberate with his words, more intentional with his time. Shen Yue appeared lighter, not because she had won, but because she had been heard. One particularly unforgettable scene unfolded weeks later at a private gathering hosted by mutual friends. The room buzzed with conversation, cameras discreetly capturing candid moments for social media. At one point, someone jokingly teased Dylan about being domesticated. Instead of deflecting with humor, he smiled calmly. When you meet someone who knows their worth, you either rise to it or step aside. The room went quiet. That single sentence spread across fan communities like wildfire. Rise to it or step aside. It became a slogan, a caption, a quiet anthem. But the most mind-blowing moment came during a live interview months later. The host, bold and curious, asked directly about the rumored rules. There was laughter in the audience, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Dylan did not dodge the question. He leaned forward slightly and said something that stunned everyone watching. The strongest decisions I have made were not about control. They were about choosing to respect what matters. The clip went viral within hours. Millions debated whether this was love or strategy. But beneath the noise, a deeper conversation began emerging. About boundaries. About accountability in relationships. About redefining strength. Shen Yue was later asked if she ever doubted issuing such firm conditions. She answered with quiet confidence. Peace is not negotiable. And that was it. No drama.
No spectacle.
Just clarity. What makes this story so compelling is not the glamour of celebrity romance. It is the reminder that even those surrounded by lights and cameras must confront the same universal truth. Love without respect cannot survive. Fame cannot substitute for character. And sometimes the bravest admission is saying I had no choice because I finally understood what was at stake. In a world obsessed with dominance, this became a story about partnership. In an industry fueled by illusion, this became a story about boundaries. In a culture that often mistakes flexibility for compromise, this became a story about standards. The skyline still glows each night. Interviews continue. Projects evolve. But those who followed this journey know that something irreversible happened in that penthouse. A line was drawn, a choice was made, and a new narrative began. So, here is the question for you. When faced with non-negotiable truths in your own life, will you resist them, or will you rise to meet them? Do not dismiss this as celebrity gossip. See it as a mirror. Boundaries are not walls. They're foundations. And the strongest structures are built on ground that refuses to shift. If this story moved you, do not simply watch from the sidelines. Reflect. Set your own standards. Demand respect. Offer it in return. Choose growth over ego. Because sometimes saying I had no choice is not surrender. It is the beginning of becoming someone better.